In the flip-flop circuit that controls sleep and arousal, the blank neurons are the stabilizing force which pushes the circuit towards arousal. Flip-flop circuit. One mechanism for the tolerance produced by repeated drug administrations is a increased number of receptors in the brain, decreased metabolism of the drug, reduced number of receptors for the drug, increased number of ion channel openings in response to receptor activation. In Siegel et al.'s classic study of classic conditioning of the heroin tolerance effect, 2 groups of rats were given heroin for 30 days in a specific environment. Then the rats were all injected with a lethal dose of heroin. What happened? Actually, none of the rats died regardless of the environment in which they received the lethal dose. Only 1/3 of the rats who received the lethal dose in the specific environment died. All of the rats died from the lethal dose regardless of the environment in which they received it. Only 1/3 of the rats died when they received the lethal dose in a novel environment where they had been exposed to heroin. Placing neurons and their synaptic contacts into a medium which contains no calcium ions would be expected to prolong the refractory period of the action potential, decrease the time required to move sodium ions out of the axon terminal button, increase the number of transmitter molecules released from the axon terminal button, prevent the release of neurotransmitter from the axon terminal button into the synapse. Axon. The blank represents the optimal value of a system variable in a homeostatic system. Correctional mechanisms, set point, detector, thermostat. Wait, detector set. I think it's set point? Yeah, I think it's set point. Right. Yeah. As long as the blank and the blank are intact, along with the hindbrain structures, complex species typical behaviors necessary for survival can be completed. Spinal cord, medulla, frontal cortex, colliculi, dienephalon, basal ganglia, cerebellum, pons. Okay. Associative long-term potential Differentiation requires the depolarization of the blank to wire together the synapse. Presynaptic neuron, either the presynaptic or the postsynaptic neuron, both the presynaptic and postsynaptic neuron, the postsynaptic neuron. When the output of a correctional mechanism is used to decrease the action of the correctional mechanism, it is called a blank loop. Negative detector, positive feedback, positive detector, negative feedback. I think it's negative feedback. Right? The study of epigenetics has shown that genetic expression is immune to environmental experiences. What one experiences in one's own lifetime cannot affect one's offspring. Experience could change the genes one has. Experience can alter the expression of one's genes. Which of the following is an incorrect match between the neurotransmitter and its effects? ACH, released by all sensory neurons. Serotonin facilitates mood regulation. Glutamate, generally excitatory in the brain. GABA, generally inhibitory of the brain. Neurotransmitter. In terms of emotional regulation, the amygdala matures blank and the prefrontal cortex matures blank. By early adolescence at the same time, by early adolescence in adulthood by early adolescence in adulthood at the same time. I don't. Prenatal stress can cause long-lasting malfunctions in learning and memory by interfering with normal development of the hypothalamus, hippocampus, thalamus, brainstem. Studies of brain abnormalities in schizophrenic patients with primary negative symptoms report larger lateral ventricles in schizophrenic patients, increased number of cells within the corpus callosum in schizophrenic patients, increased number of gyri and Sulci in schizophrenic patients, and inflammation of the Golgi structures in schizophrenic patients. REM-on neurons are located within the blank, whereas REM-off neurons are located within the blank. Suprachiasmatic nucleus, Vollmer nasal organ, anterior thalamus, posterior hypothalamus, dorsal pons, ventrolateral PAG, bed nuclei of the stria terminalis, third interstitial nucleus of the anterior hypothalamus. The positive symptoms of schizophrenia are reversed by drugs that decrease histamine, GABA, dopamine, serotonin. We're from the final. I think it's. I don't. Okay. The action of stress, which suppresses immune function, is mostly due to the impaired secretion of renin, inactivity of the pituitary, increased formation of immunoglobulins, increased secretion of the cortisol. Hamster A has a 24-hour rhythm. Hamster A has its SCN removed and replaced with the SCN of hamster B, which has an endogenous rhythm of 20 hours. What is the resultant rhythm of hamster A? Oh, God. I think it's 20 hours. The activity of the hypothalamus most directly influences where the body is in space, heartbeat and breathing, muscular coordination, motivated behaviors. The hypothalamus. To establish a conditioned emotional response, the blank plays a central role. Cingulate gyrus, superior temporal sulcus, periodontal gray, amygdala. Abnormal brain levels of dopamine, too much or too little, are associated with mood disorder and depression, Alzheimer's disease and schizophrenia, schizophrenia and Parkinson's disease, mania, and bipolar disorder. I think it's bipolar disorder. Both blank and blank act in the hypothalamus to increase eating in the rat. Serotonin, CCK, orexin, NPY, CCK, ghrelin, NPY, leptin. Increase eating. The markers for stage 2 and REM sleep are the presence of blank and hypnagogic hallucination, visual imagery, sleep spindles, K complex, atonia, beta activity, theta activity, delta activity. Jules experienced a stroke that greatly impaired his ability to remember his family and friends. However, he still remembers how to play the piano, although he has no memory of ever learning how to play. It appears that Jules' blank memory is still intact. Semantic, declarative, episodic, procedural. Declarative. Oh no. A person with damage to the cerebellum would be expected to show an inability to orient, reflexive receptivity to unexpected moving visual stimuli, improvements in posture, constructional aparaxia, difficulty with the timing of fast-paced movements. Which of the following is true of the sleep cycles of a healthy human? Subjects must enter REM sleep, then transition to non-REM sleep for the remainder of the night. Sleep cycles randomly enter REM and non-REM throughout the night. Slow wave sleep mostly occurs in the hour before one wakes. The sleep cycle consists of periods of non-REM alternating with periods of REM. Well, the prenatal development of the internal reproductive structures of the female does not require a sex hormone to be present, is caused by secretion of progesterone, requires secretion of estradiol by the pituitary, requires the suppression of the Mullerian system by anti-Mullerian hormone. I don't know. Which of the following is an advantage associated with myelination? Myelin increases the axon conduction speed. Myelin changes the amplitude of the action potential. Myelin increases the production of neurotransmitters in the neuron. Myelin reduces the threshold of the induction of an action potential. Changes the amplitude. Myelination. Which of the following is an action that a drug agonist would not do? Increase the reuptake of a neurotransmitter, promote the release of a neurotransmitter, bind onto the activate receptor sites, felicitate the production and storage of a neurotransmitter. All of the following are involved in the reoccurring loop of brain activity seen in OCD except basal ganglia, reticular activating system, anterior cingulate cortex, prefrontal cortex. Anterior. Your ability to recognize a series of tones as the opening notes of the Star-Spangled Banner is an instance of blank and involves the blank. Stimulus response learning, frontal cortex, classical conditioning, corpus callosum, priming, visual association cortex, perceptual learning, and auditory association cortex. The structures which make up the basal ganglia are primary visual, primary auditory, and primary somatosensory cortices, superior collici and the inferior collici, caudate nucleus, putamen, and globus pallidus, cingulate gyrus, hippocampus, and amygdala. All of the following are appropriately paired lobes and functions except temporal lobe, memory function, occipital lobe, visual function, frontal lobe, motor function, parietal lobe, auditory function. I don't know. The blank plays the major role in short-term memory. Prefrontal cortex, inferior temporal cortex, dorsal parietal cortex, cingulate cortex. The blank is involved in aggressive attack, predation, sexual reflexes, and regulation of pain. Insular cortex, parietal lobe, superior colliculus, periodictal gray. Schizophrenia, PTSD, OCD, major depression, and the anxiety disorders all have blank in common. Overactive basal ganglia, dorsal stream activity, hypothalamic damage, hypofrontality. I don't think I wrote this down. For active. I think the frontal cortex. As compared to a metabotropic receptor, the postsynaptic potential produced at an ionotropic receptor is rapid and short in duration, slow to develop and long in duration, rapid but of long duration, slow to develop but short in duration. As you study for your neuroscience exam, you look at your arm and see a large spider crawling on it. You jerk your arm automatically to remove the spider. What would be the typical neural pathway for the action of flicking the spider off your arm? Motor neuron, sensory neuron, interneuron, muscle. Interneuron, sensory neuron, motor neuron, muscle. Sensory neuron, interneuron, motor neuron, muscle. Sensory neuron, motor neuron, interneuron, muscle. Oh gosh. The ventral stream of information is through the brain is involved in knowing what, why, where, when. Alpha motor neurons release blank onto muscle fibers to initiate contractions. Cytocholine, GABA, glutamine, dopamine. Alpha motor Lithium is an effect treatment for blank but not blank. Anxiety disorder, delusions, major depression, hallucinations, bipolar disorder, major depression, panic attacks, PTSD. Lithium. All successful treatments of major depressive disorder serve to decrease activity of the blank. Subgenual anterior cingulate cortex, superior temporal sulcus, ventromedial prefrontal cortex, lateral peripheral cortex. Mullerian system structures are precursors to the male internal sex organs, ovaries, testes, female internal sex organs. What? Wait, Mullerian system? Yeah, that's right? It's testes, right? No. Wait. The reinforcing and addictive effects of drugs such as amphetamine reflect the actions of blank projections of the blank. GABA, mesocortical pathway, leptin, mesocortical pathway, dopamine, mesolimbic pathway, norepinephrine, nigrostriatal pathway. Which of the following characterizes REM sleep? When woken up in the stage, people are often groggy and confused. When the stage, people are often able to toss and turn in bed, moving freely. The person experiences dreams with vague sensations or feelings. The person experiences vivid dream imagery. Vivid dream. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's vivid. In LTP, weak synapses are strengthened by adding more blank receptors to the weaker synapse. ACC, NDMA, COMT, AMPA. ACC. The factor that determines whether the undifferentiated gonads develop into testes is the 21st pair of chromosomes, secretion of androgens from the gonads, secretion of testosterone from the adrenal glands, SRY gene located on the Y chromosome. Pretty sure it's that. The blank plays an important role in provoking anger and emotional reactions, and the blank plays an important role in inhibiting such behavior. Hippocampus, cingulate cortex, hippocampus, amygdala, prefrontal cortex, amygdala. Provoking anger. and emotional reactions, inhibiting such behavior. The cells that can only use glucose as their energy source are brain cells, liver cells, muscle cells, adipose cells. I don't. Descartes' view on the mind body was unique for his time in that he argued that the muscles are activated by electrical nerve signals. Unlike animals, human bodies do not show reflexes. The heart is the organ that controls emotions. The spiritual mind controls the movement of the mechanical body. Mechanical body. Damage to the basal ganglia would be expected to produce difficulties in forming emotional memories, gauging the force of motor movements accurately, understanding social rules, recognizing emotion in the facial expressions of other people. Basal ganglia functions. I know I read basal ganglia functions. Motor neuron. Blank is secreted by pancreatic cells in response to a decrease in blood glucose levels. Leptin, adenosine, insulin, glucagon. Donhab's concept of a neural network can be summarized by saying, neurons which fire together wire together, lightning doesn't strike twice, my medulla, oh you make my motor run. Double the stem cells, double size the brain. Pretty sure it's that. A blank will be recorded from a nerve cell whose membrane potential rises above the threshold at the axon hillock. Hyperpolarization, local potential, polarization, action potential. Axon hillock. Action potentials are generated at the blank and are conducted along the blank. Axon hillock, axon button, glial membrane, terminal buttons, dendrite, axon, dendrite. Action potentials. All of the following brain areas and functions are correctly matched except supplemental motor cortex, actions that are initiated by cues, premotor cortex, actions initiated by the presence of arbitrary stimuli, primary motor cortex, excitation of alpha motor neurons, prefrontal cortex, sensory processing of visual, auditory, and somatic stimuli. The proposition that facial expressions of emotions are innate is supported by the observation that some facial emotion expressions are only expressed in adulthood, Facial expressions of basic emotions vary by culture and over time. Blind children show different facial emotion expressions than do sighted persons. The same facial expression for a basic emotion is observed in all normally functioning members of the species. A change in the axon membrane potential from negative 70 MV to 90 MV would be depolarization, action potential, threshold potential, hyperpolarization. The neurotransmitters most implicated in major depression are acetylcholine and dopamine, serotonin, anorexin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, and serotonin. I don't know if I have that. Well, I don't know. All of the following are brain structures found in the telecyphon, except limbic system, neocortex, basal ganglia, reticular formation. I don't think I have that. A byproduct of the metabolism of energy in the astrolate glial cells provide for neurons is blank, which in turn promotes blank. Orexin, REM sleep, adenosine, wakefulness, adenosine sleep, GABA, REM sleep.